Hello? Hello?
Hi, hello.
Welcome to my YouTube. Hello. Welcome back, YouTube viewers. Welcome to my channel again. This is the second time that I'm filming my September wrap-up because the first time I forgot not one book, not even two books. I forgot 4 books somehow, and I only read 12 books in September, so I don't know. We don't know. I already posted a video about the first 7 books that I read in September. I'll link it down below, but I'm just gonna quickly go over their ratings real quick. So I read The House in the Cerulean Sea and I gave it 5 stars. I read Small Spaces by Catherine Arden and I gave her 3 stars. And then I read From Love to A to Z by S.K.L.E. and I gave that 4 stars. When No One Is Watching, and I gave that 4 stars as well. And then I read my favorite book of the entire month probably, and that is You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson, and I gave that a full 5 stars. Cannot recommend enough. I loved it so much. And then I read One by One by Ruth Ware, and I gave it 4 stars. All right, so let's get into the books that I read in the later half of September. The first one I want to talk about, the one that I forgot, one of the ones that I forgot in my original filming of this video, was a DNF that I did. And for my friends and family that are watching that don't know booktube terms, DNF stands for Did Not Finish. And that would be Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. This is like a very tentative DNF in the sense that I do want to come back to it. I just think that I wasn't reading it at the right time maybe. I rented it from the library as well, and anytime you have a huge book like that that's kind of like an epic fantasy and you are on this time crunch to finish it, it's just not enjoyable. For those of you who don't know what Name of the Wind is about, it's an epic high fantasy that follows a man named Kvothe who is essentially retelling his story to a chronicler in an inn one night, and the entire series takes part in that inn while he just talks about his life. It was really interesting and I did like it. I just didn't feel very connected to Kvothe as a character. There are some people who take issue with the way Kvothe is presented. He's kind of like this perfect character and he can do everything correct and everything always happens perfectly for him, but I didn't necessarily feel like I didn't like him because of that. I just didn't connect to him at all. The writing wasn't bad at all. Patrick Rothfuss is a great writer, but it just didn't really work out for me. That being said, I did watch a review recently from Fantasy Talk. Yes, I had to think about it. And I really liked his review of it and I thought the video was really funny, so I'm gonna link it in the description below too. In case you're interested in this book, maybe watch what he talks about it instead of me. I didn't give it a good enough chance, I guess. And I think that I'm gonna like maybe buy it and read it. And I know you're probably like, why would you buy a book that you don't even know if you're gonna like? And that's because I have problems. I have many problems. And buying books is one of them. Seltzer water. When you get old, you start liking seltzer water. So the next book that I read in September was The Line Tender by Kate Allen. This is a contemporary middle grade. I gave it 4 stars. I personally loved it. It's following a character named Lucy who lost her mother at a pretty young age. Her mother was a marine biologist, and her coworker that she knew as a child brings in a shark one day, and it sort of sets off this catalyst for Lucy to start learning more about her mother. She was never very interested in her mother's line of work, but seeing her coworker again and seeing that shark really put it in her head. And then pretty much 25% into the book, Lucy experiences another very tragic loss, and the entire book is sort of about her dealing with that loss and the grief and processing it. I thought this book was beautiful. I loved it. The writing in it is so good. Kate Allen really toes the line between like really poetic prose and beautiful writing while also being very accessible since it's a middle grade novel. And I really, really appreciated that as well. I think this is a perfect book for the age range that it's depicted for, because I think anyone in middle grade who has had to potentially deal with these sorts of feelings could really take something from this book. At its core, it's definitely a book about hope and about healing and recovery, but it isn't something that happens overnight for Lucy. It is something that she has to learn with gradually and come to terms with everything that's happened to her. I really, really enjoyed that. I also loved Lucy's relationship with her father and also the other characters in the book. She is mostly interacting with other adults and they don't really understand her and she doesn't understand what they're trying to tell her, but she slowly puzzles and pieces it together, and I really, really, really recommend it. And the cover is also gorgeous. So the next book that I picked up was The Calculating Stars by Mary Robinette Kowal. I picked this up because Starla Reads really recommends it on her channel. I think she gives it a 5-star, lists it as like an absolute fave on her Goodreads, and I definitely really liked it. I gave it about 3 stars, and I'll tell you why. It's an adult alternate historical fiction, so it's set in the 1950s, and a meteorite crashes on the east coast of America, creating this catastrophe event that could potentially lead into being an extinction event, which would mean that the Earth would be completely inhabitable in the next 20 years or so. Pretty much the same thing that happened to the dinosaurs is happening again. And this book follows a main character named Elma, who is a calculator or a computer mathematician for the space NASA, NACA, I don't really know what it's called, but the people who are in charge of putting people in space to colonize space. And her husband is the lead engineer. And I loved Elma as a character personally. She was my favorite part of this book. She was so stubborn and strong and like intelligent, but she was also very vulnerable. This book deals a lot with her coming to terms with the grief of losing family members in this catastrophe event, while also she's struggling with anxiety because she wants to be an astronaut. She wants to go to space just like the men can, and challenging the patriarchal ideals in the 1950s is hard enough. Harder still when you're trying to convince everyone that the world is gonna be dead in 20 years. I loved Elma, and I loved her relationship with her husband too. They had a very, very grounded relationship. Their romance isn't a forefront in the book, it's just there, and I really appreciated that too because I don't really care to read about romance that much. Nathaniel as her husband was a really great character because at no point was he ever unsupportive of her in the typical way you might imagine. At no point was he like, I'm scared for you, I don't want you to go to space, what could happen, etc. He never had any sexist ideas of like women shouldn't go to space, which I didn't think he would, but I was almost waiting for the moment where there would be some like emotional event where they like sat down and talked and he was like, I don't want you to go because I'm scared, but it never actually happened, and he was just so supportive the entire time. The only thing that I really didn't like about this novel was how long it was, and that's not really a discredit to the book itself. Maybe I just was expecting something different when I went into this, but when you pick this up, don't expect it to be like action-packed or anything like that, or fast-paced. It is very slow-paced, and at times it's very like slice of life-y, like, you know, they're going through their day-to-day life almost, and to me that was just a little bit boring. It's 421 pages, and I think honestly I could have done without at least 100 pages of it. There were some parts that I just didn't really care that much. So by the end of it, I was kind of like, instead of being like excited and like, yes, it's happening, I was just like, finally, we're there. That being said, I didn't really expect it going in. I didn't expect a super fast-paced, explosive, action-packed thing, but I didn't expect it to be so slow. I am definitely going to pick up the next book in the series because I am interested and I really want to see where it's going. And I think that tackling the second book, I'll have a better understanding of her writing and what to expect from it. So I recommend it, but definitely be prepared for a long book. I'm sorry that I'm even holding this up, but the next book that I read in September was Crave by Tracy Wolff. And this is, oh gosh. So this is a young paranormal romance focused on a girl named Grace who recently lost her family in a tragic car accident and has to go live with her uncle, who is the headmaster of an academy called Katmere. And I wish it wasn't called Katmere. I can't even take the name Katmere seriously. You're gonna name your fancy supernatural paranormal academy Katmere? My God. What can I say about this book? I can say that if you're my dad and you're watching this, please skip this, and please don't text me asking me why I continue to read bad young adult vampire romance novels. I can't explain it, and I hate myself for it anyway. This is Twilight fanfiction, and that's not to say that any young paranormal vampire romance is going to be Twilight fanfiction. She did not set up the genre. She is not the blueprint. Stephenie Meyer is not the best in the game, but this is literal Twilight fanfiction. Like, it's pitched that way. This is the Twilight cover. If you search Twilight, this comes up as a recommendation. There is an acknowledgement to Stephenie in the book. The main love interest in this book, Jackson, gives Grace a copy of Twilight with a quote from it. Aside from just being Twilight fan fiction, this is just really, really awful. It is written terribly. Here's a quote. Grace is describing Katmere when she first sees it. First of all, it's big, like really big, and sprawling. Second, it's elegant, like really, really elegant. I can't go on. I can't even read that. That is trash. And secondly, I'll be completely honest with you. I counted this as a book that I read because I slogged through about 250 pages, but I didn't finish it because I couldn't finish it. I hated it. The first 3 days of her being in this academy happened over the first 250 pages. Talk about slow and boring. The characters are stupid. She's an idiot. All these crazy things are happening around her where men aren't wearing any protective gear in the Alaskan winter and people keep almost calling this guy a dragon. And she's just like, man, things are really weird around here. This is so strange. And the love interest, everyone keeps warning her like, Jackson's dangerous. You don't need to interact with him. He's so dangerous. Stay away from him. And she's like, yeah, I can tell he's dangerous because of his alluring eye and his cruel smile, and I can just tell. And it's like, if I was in high school and someone came and told me that someone was dangerous, I would assume that he's selling drugs or something like that. Not that he's like sexy, weird, dangerous. I don't know. This book sucked. And the only reason this got published is because it's Twilight fan fiction and they think they can bank off this. But I genuinely think we should not give this author the money. Like, this is horrible. This is bad. It is badly written. It's a bad concept. Everything about it sucks. But it's getting published and it's getting money because we keep buying it. And there's so many other authors that we could support. At this point, I'm going on a tangent. That was Crave by Tracy Wolff. So, last book, and one of the best books that I've ever read. Like I said earlier, You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson is my favorite book of the month, but this is a completely different genre, so I don't feel bad saying that The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones is also my favorite book of the month and possibly one of my favorite horror novels of all time. I'm gonna mention another YouTuber. Her name is Katrina. I was watching her, I think it was a vlog. It was either a vlog or like an actual sit-down video where she was talking about The Only Good Indians, and she mentioned that she watched someone else's video and they were like, oh, it's so gory. And she was like, oh, I want to read that. And then she read it and she was like, oh, it's really gory. And I was like, ooh, I want to read that. And I am here to tell you, it's really gory. I gave this book 5 stars, 5 whole stars, well-deserved, wonderful, I loved it, fantastic, Lady Gaga gif. The premise of the book is about 4 Native American men who in their early 20s went hunting and committed this sort of crime against nature, and it spurns this revenge event from this nature entity that then follows them into their late 30s and is basically hunting them down and systematically wants to kill every one of them. She has an elk head and she's terrifying. There's almost no words for how much I enjoyed this book. I consumed it so quickly. I was so gripped by it. I want a physical copy so I can read it again. I made my best friend Dylan read it as soon as I finished it because I was like, someone else needs to be reading this and someone needs to talk to me about this. The one thing I will say is that Stephen Graham Jones has a very intricate and interesting prose that might not be something everyone can really get behind. My least favorite thing that anyone in the book sphere, the bookish community does is if you like don't understand a book, you're just automatically like, this is bad and I don't like it. That's wrong. If you can't really understand Stephen Graham's prose, that's nothing against you, nor is that anything against him. It's just not a book for you, so just pass it along. But for me, his writing style is phenomenal. I loved it. I felt so connected to it and so drawn in, and the way he writes is so fast-paced that I just felt like I could keep reading and keep reading and keep reading and never get tired of it. He has a very lyrical and like almost musical way of writing that is underrated, I think. This is not a book that you can passively read. It's not something that you can just sit down and like bang out in one day or just read and not really be paying attention, or read while you have like a movie on in the background or something. This is something you really have to pay attention to and absorb while you're reading to really grasp and understand what he's saying, because he does slip in so many different things into little sentences. Like something big could happen, but it happens like that because he just said it in such a blunt and like brutal way. The only thing there's 2 things really that I'll mention. A lot of people talk about the basketball in this book, and basketball is kind of like really frequently brought up topic. Like, he talks about basketball a lot. I didn't have any issue with that, honestly, maybe because I was listening to the audiobook. So I kind of just listened and didn't really mind. I really trusted Stephen Graham Jones to be taking me to wherever I needed to go in the book. I don't know anything about basketball. I don't watch sports. What are sports? I don't even know. But it didn't impede the book for me. And from another booktuber's video, Brody, he mentioned that basketball is a very significant part of Native American culture and how it's really helped people on the reservation. That's another reason why I was just like not really bothered by it. The other thing is that I'm not Native American. I have not grown up on a reservation. So there's a lot of parts of this book that I didn't fully understand, but that's nothing against the book either. You know, he wrote this book not just for white people, he wrote it for Native Americans, people who have lived on reservations and understand what reservation life is like. I wish that I could fully understand it because I think that this book probably hits so much differently for people who do understand the culture. That being said, still loved it, still a phenomenal book. I'm gonna reread it for sure. I can't wait to reread it, and I loved it. Okay, so that was all the books that I read in September. Sorry this is coming a little bit late. Like I said, I fucked up the first one. I was so chaotic in it and it just didn't make any sense and I was just losing my mind. And then my boyfriend, who does freelance videography work, he took like their lights and cameras and went and fucked off to go make money. How dare he? And then accidentally left the lights at our friend's house. So I'm filming like a little bit late, but I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I have been loving watching people's wrap-ups. If you have done a September wrap-up and I haven't commented on it, because I comment on every video I watch because I love to support small content creators. Like I said, if you have a September wrap-up and I haven't watched it, comment. I will watch it. I will like your video. Like I said, we support other fellow content creators in this household. I think I'm rambling again. That was for Emmanuel. The finger guns were for Emmanuel. Whatever. Bye, guys.